All right, so recovery day 8. If your hips, knees, or low back feels like absolute trash, try this routine, see if that helps. If it helps, maybe do it more often. Okay, so we'll hold these stretches for about 30 to 45 seconds. If you really enjoy these, 45 seconds to a minute is totally fine. Just make sure when you're doing these, try and breathe, try and relax. Upon exhaling, try and get a little bit deeper into whatever stretch it is that we're doing. All right, so first stretch is this rear foot elevated hip flexor stretch. One foot is on this bench. I already feel a decent quad stretch towards the top. I'm going to keep my ribs down and squeeze my glute, and I should feel a hip flexor stretch right here. I'll hold this for 30 to 45 seconds, trying to relax. Every exhale, I'll try and relax by dropping deeper into that stretch. And once you're done, hit that other side. Again, ribs down, squeeze that glute, and try and get deeper into that stretch as the set goes on. Okay, next we got figure 4 stretch. So from here, I'm just bending this leg in. If I can get this shin horizontal, perpendicular to my body, that's awesome. If not, I'll just keep a more narrow angle from this thigh in regards to that shin. So from here, try and sit your hips down and kind of turn your opposite hip towards the ground to feel a stretch through the glute. I like to push away with this hand to assist pushing that hip towards the ground. Find a nice glute stretch. Again, every exhale, try and sit a little bit deeper into that stretch. And I'll switch to my right side, pushing away with my right hand to drop my left hip towards the ground, feeling a good glute stretch, holding this for 30 to 45 seconds. Good, and next we'll go into this groin stretch. So to start, one leg is straight, I'm on the other knee. I'm gonna try and level out both hips so I'm not super tilted like this, right? But from here, ribs down, just like any other exercise or position that we kind of cue, and then push your hips back, drop your hands to the ground as is needed. Try and keep the outside edge of your foot down and push your hips as far back as you can to feel a groin stretch. This is about my end range, but like we keep talking about, every exhale, I'll try and sit deeper into that stretch. Good, and then again, one leg straight, outside edge of that foot down, hips relatively level. Push your hips back into an RDL, plant your hands, keep sitting back into the hips, and then every exhale from your end range, see if you can get a little bit lower. Okay, from there, we're gonna go into this Spider-Man deep lunge. So you'll notice my knee is just off the ground. My foot is up by my hand, relatively vertical shin. I'm gonna open this leg up to open up my hips, using my hands to take off as much body weight from my legs as is needed. I'm trying to keep this back leg straight, push my toes down into the ground, push my heel back towards that back wall, squeeze my quad and squeeze my glute. While holding these positions, I'm going to slowly try and drop my hips towards the ground as the set goes on to get a little bit more intense of a stretch. Once you're done, go ahead and switch. Again, back leg stays relatively straight. Push that heel back, squeeze the glute quad, and drop the hips. Open this leg up as is needed, and use your hands as is needed as well. Okay, in the 90-90 rotation, this leg is at 90 degrees. You can see my thigh and my shin make about a 90-degree angle. Same with this back leg. So I'm gonna sit nice and upright. From here, I'm going to plant this outside arm, my right arm, reach underneath with my opposite arm and pull myself down to rotate my upper back. That's our thoracic spine, our T-spine, which we want to rotate. I'll sit upright again. Keep my chest upright, rely on my hands as little as is possible, keep my heels down, and then rotate my knees to this other side, adjusting our legs back to 90 degrees as is needed, and plant our outside hand, pull to rotate our upper back. We'll hit 3 on each side here. Good, and then just one other tip here. You'll notice that when sitting upright and preparing to rotate, sometimes we kind of want to like arch back, right, to make it easier to rotate these legs to the other side. Do that as is needed, but try and challenge that range to the point where we can sit relatively upright, apply little pressure with our hands, keep our heels down, and then rotate from side to side. Good, then we'll go into single leg RDL hold. So I'll have this bench to take off as much weight as is needed. I'll keep my ribs down just like I normally would to avoid arch my low back. Hinge into this single leg RDL position, back leg high, squeeze the glute of the leg in the air, keep those toes pointed into the ground, and then push away with this leg without hyperextending this knee. should find a good hamstring stretch there, and we'll hold this for 30 to 45 seconds on each side. Good, and wide stance side bend. I'm a huge fan of these. Keeping our legs or feet wide, keeping the outside edge of our feet down, bringing my arms overhead. I'm trying to keep this hip in place to open up the bottom rib from that hip to stretch this QL, which if it gets tight can be a huge contributor to low back pain. You might also feel this stretch up into the lat, which is awesome. That's great, right? So we really want to stretch this QL and then continue to reach away to stretch this lat. The goal is to get a nice rainbow-like arch through the side of our lat down to our hip. And as I go through with these, I'm actively thinking about reaching away with that top arm and then keeping that outside edge of the foot down. Back to center, and then same thing on the other side. And I like just alternating back and forth between these for 10 on each side. Okay, next we got this wide stance hamstring stretch. So it'll be like a wide stance RDL, but we're also going to let the lower back decompress. So it'll look like this. I'll show you a side view here. Okay, so from this position, I'm going to push my hips back into an RDL, a wide stance RDL, and then grab my arms and just let my upper body hang and almost become dead weight to decompress my lower back and stretch my lower back. I'll hold this for about 30 to 45 seconds. One other thing you can do if this becomes a little too easy is grab the ground and pull yourself back into a more intense stretch. Good, next we'll just get a little bit more rotation through the hips with these hip cars. From the front view, it'll look like this. Use this support, nice and tall through this leg, knee up, toe up, ribs down. Keep this knee high as we rotate out to the side. Keep this knee high as we rotate that foot back. Trying not to bend too much at this hip here, dropping this knee back down towards our other, and then retracing that same pattern. Knee wide, rotate that knee back above the foot, keep this knee high, bring it back to the front, and then drop it back down. Okay, and then the last thing that we'll do today is a split squat hold. We only have one set, and we're just doing 30 seconds on each side. So they can be miserable, but we get a lot out of this movement. So see how you feel afterwards before you decide never to do these things again. Okay, so from this half kneeling position, I'll push my back toes down into the ground. I'll squeeze this glute to push this hip forward. I'll brace my core by bringing my ribs down, and then I'll push off of this leg to bring myself 1 inch off the ground, and then pull this front foot at about 60%, and then this back foot forward at about 60% during this hold. And I'm just going to hold this for 30 seconds. Again, back foot push down and forward, front foot push down and pulled back. Squeeze this glute, keep these ribs down, try and keep this femur parallel. And other side one more time, back toes pushed down, squeeze this glute, ribs down, lift 1 inch off, push this foot down and pull back as this leg pulls this foot forward while maintaining a good core position, keeping this femur about parallel with the ground. Let me hold this for 30 seconds.